Moms come into court and tell a tale of woe, whereas men are very hesitant to stand up for themselves. In an office workplace, we know how to do that. In family court, all of a sudden, it's like we're speaking a foreign language.
All right. Well, Ed, I'm excited because today we have David Pisarra, founder of Dad's Law School, on the show. So for 25 years, he's defended fathers' interests in family court as a family law attorney. His Men's Family Law podcast, over 70 episodes, has helped thousands of people understand the complexities of family court. He's written 3 books for men about family law and has contributed to Gender and Domestic Violence, published by Oxford University Press. So David recognizes that most dads do not have the resources for high-priced legal counsel, and so he created Dad's Law School. It's an online platform that teaches fathers how to represent themselves in family court to protect their custodial rights. He's on a mission to help the fathers of America be a regular presence in their children's lives with equal shared parenting time. He is a recognized international speaker, having presented in New Zealand, South Africa, England, Mexico, Namibia, and India. So David, welcome to the Dad Central Show. We're so glad to have you here.
Hey, Drew, Ed, great to be here, guys. Really looking forward to today.
Excellent, excellent. Started off, Drew?
Well, this is a little bit challenging for me because I've just gone through and I'm almost completed my family court process.
Ooh.
One of the lines that you said is you help dads in a situation that they never wanted to be in. And that was definitely my case. So this story is not about me, but I guess it's difficult for me because I've kind of gone through it already. And so I'm curious to hear what you have to say. And I dealt with some pretty challenging situations I'm sure it'll come up. So, but why don't we just get started by telling us and the listeners a little bit more about how did you even come to this place of supporting dads when it comes to family court and custody?
Well, I think it's an interesting story. I met my law partner second day of law school, and we've been best friends ever since. Graduate law school, pass the bar, open up our office, and I turn to him and I say, "So what do you want to practice?" And he says, "I want to do family law." And I'm like, "Oh, gross. I wanted to do business. I wanted to go be like Gordon Gekko, captain of industry, like let's take on the world." And I would go to the Rotary Club and the Chamber of Commerce and the Elks Club, and I do my little dog and pony show and what I offered people in business. And no one wanted to talk to me. I was total crickets. And at the end, I would say, "And my partner does family law." And immediately I would get rushed. Like, can he lower my alimony? Can he get me more time with my kids? Can he take away my child support? I've got to get out of this marriage. Before I knew it, his calendar was completely packed and started spilling into my calendar. And 25 years later, now I'm a divorce lawyer who represents dads. Along the way, I've represented a bunch of women. At one point, I read about 50-50 and realized that like I was just overwhelmed with craziness. And I made a list of clients I liked and clients that I couldn't stand anymore. And it was like boys on the left and girls on the right. I looked at that and I'm like, what's going on here? I mean, I'm a single gay man, but really, there's got to be more than this, because you would think I'd actually gravitate towards the women on that one. What I found was that dads don't know what they're doing going into court. They get chewed up. They're easier as clients because they walk in, they're like, "I want out. What's it going to cost me? How long is it going to take? Here's your retainer. Call me when you need me." With her, it's, "I want the kids. I want the house. I want the pension. I want the retirement. I want lifetime support. I want to destroy him, kill him, take everything away from him. Oh, and you got to go get money from him because I'm broke. And I'm never paying my bill." It was a pretty easy analysis to be like, okay, now I understand why I'm gravitating towards where I'm gravitating. And what I've noticed over the years is that it's gotten worse for men. 20 years ago, it would be, okay, they're getting a raw deal, but here I understand why. Now what's happening is they're getting a raw deal, not because of like work, but because they're going into court against a system that has really kind of been militarized against men. With the ability of someone to go into court these days and get a domestic violence restraining order based on, "I'm afraid that," is grounds for a restraining order. It's an easy thing for a woman to walk into court Be like, I'm afraid that he's going to get abusive, going to be angry, going to hurt me, going to hurt the kids. And judges rubber stamp those restraining orders, which have huge impacts on custody. In California, for example, it's a presumption that you're not a good parent if you're considered to be a perpetrator of abuse. Well, perpetrating abuse these days is coercive control, which I don't even know what that means. It's a completely meaningless phrase. And it's based on someone's perception of what abuse is. So if I just say, I'm afraid he's abusing me, am I really being abused? No, because what I said was, I'm afraid of abuse. And that is enough for a judge to sign off, kick you out of your house, take your kids from you, make you pay alimony, make you pay child support, make you pay supervision fees for a supervisor to see your kids, if you even get to see them, make you go to batters intervention classes, make you go to anger management classes, all of which was on, I'm afraid. So the system is kind of like wonky at the moment, and men need to know a lot more about going into family court, which is why I created dadslawschool.com, to try and help dads understand what they're really up against.
Yeah. Okay. So a lot in there. So thank you for that story. Thank you for helping us see and understand, how that's evolved for you. Again, I mentioned a little bit of a personal story there. So it sounds like the system that you've been working in over the past 20 years has had some shifts. And there is even more opportunity for those who are in the system, on whatever side you are, to leverage the way it is now to create barriers, problems, issues, or to leverage it for their own personal, whatever that agenda might be. And that is really challenging, I'd say, for everyone in the system, but in particular, it sounds like for a father who may have an ex-partner who wants to leverage it to create challenges for them for whatever reason.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Yeah?
Absolutely.
Okay.
And
So go ahead.
And the problem is this. The system is designed to be protective, and it wants to protect the kids. It wants to protect the victims of abuse. But in the system, primarily that's perceived as the moms, because moms come into court and tell a tale of woe, whereas men are very hesitant to stand up for themselves. It's the one environment where men are not really good at being like, this is what I need, this is what I want, this is how I'm going to get it. In an office workplace, we know how to do that. In family court, all of a sudden, it's like we're speaking a foreign language. And that's why dads need to know more about what's going to happen to them when they go into court, how to present themselves, and how to ask for what they want.
Yeah, I remember listening to a podcast, Jordan Peterson podcast, and I forget his name, but I think it was Greg Ellis, maybe.
Yeah.
He's created the Respondent, and he shared his personal story, which was pretty horrific, of what happened to him.
Mm-hmm.
And how it really just shattered his, the relationships initially with his children. And I know. So what I wanted, I guess, for you to talk about is, what are dads really up against, I guess? What's the reality, and how, what are they up against? Let's set that stage so that they know what they're going into, and then we can get into, okay, so how do you navigate this?
So in a normal relationship breakup, without domestic violence restraining orders, just a normal, like, okay, we've been together 5 years, have 2 kids, it's time for us to move on. What they're up against is the status quo of they move out because generally she has said, you should just move out and things will be better and I'll take care of the kids. And then they go into court and they're like, well, I want 50% custody. And the judge is looking at that and saying, well, wait a second. You left the kids with mom. You guys have a system already in place. Why should we change that? And so now they're up against just the entropy of what's actually gone on. Like, you're trying to now change a system that's already in place. So you have to go in and explain to the judge why you're a good father, why you're a capable father, why you have an appropriate living environment, why your work schedule is going to allow you to have the time for these kids, why you know what you're doing. Because mom's going to come in and say, he doesn't have time because he works 80 hours a week. He doesn't know what he's doing with the children. He doesn't know how to parent. He's a negligent parent. He doesn't know what they like. He doesn't know their doctors, their food allergies, what their best friend's name is. He doesn't know. And the judge is looking at this and saying, well, Dad, what do you got for me? And most men walk into court and say, I'm a great dad, and shut up. They don't know what else they're supposed to say. They know the information. They just don't know they're supposed to share it. So it's one of the things we talk about in Dad's Law School is here's how you pull that information out of your brain and put it on paper in a format so that a judge can actually understand who you are. Most people think the first impression you make with the judge is when you walk into court. That's wrong. The first impression you make with the judge is in your paperwork. It's what are you submitting to that judge before you're even in the courtroom? Because they're going to read that and they're going to have made an impression of you from your papers alone. And if the only thing on there is we have kids, I work, kids are with mom, I'm a great dad, you haven't made a real impression.
Well, it's interesting. I remember one of the comments that Greg made in his podcast that he was sharing his story was that, family law is the only branch of the legal system where you are guilty until proven innocent, whereas everywhere else you are innocent until proven guilty. And so can you talk a little bit about that?
Sure. And that's it's an interesting way of putting it because you're not really guilty. What you are is you're up against the lies that the other side is telling about you in family court. So, for example, paternity case gets filed, mom goes into court, files for a request for orders. She wants custody, she wants child support, and you have to start paying. Well, in that, what she's done is she's told the judge everything about your situation. And again, this is the judge's first impression of mom, but also of you, because he's getting information about you from her. So that's where the guilty part is because the judge is like, okay, so this is what I'm being told is the situation. If you don't give me something to balance that out, to counteract what she's saying is going to go. So that's why dads have to come into court with their response to that. It says, here's what's really going on. Yes, they work 80 hours a week. However, I have a flexible job. I happen to work from home. My boss happens to be my brother who allows me to have whatever time I need. Those are facts that the judge may not know because conveniently mom didn't bother to put those in her declaration to the judge because that would impact the judge's perception of you. So this is where they may say something and you'd be guilty of it, but you've got an opportunity to counterbalance that by going into court and telling the judge what they need to know about you.
Okay, sounds good. Ed, any thoughts?
Yeah, I just want to bounce off, and I know you've maybe shared a little bit around this, but what are some common misconceptions dads have about family law?
That it's going to be fair, that the judge is going to do the right thing, that the judge is going to actually seek fairness and justice. It's not about that. We don't have a justice system. Judge is not going to dig in and figure out, like, are you really that wonderful, loving, attentive parent unless you tell them. The judge is going to have 15 minutes, maybe an hour, if you actually schedule it out to make a decision about what's happening with your family. They've done most of their work by reading the papers in chambers. So when they come out and sit on that bench, they already know really where they're leaning. And it's for you to then kind of push them over the edge into whichever decision they're going to make. And that's why the papers where you file are so crucial, because all of the work that you really need to do is behind the scenes. It's before you're ever even in court. People think that they're going to be able to walk into court, argue to the judge, have that moment of, you can't handle the truth. And it's not the way it works. It's just not. The way it works is one party files papers, the other party files responsive papers. The judge is going to read both of those and have an impression of, where does this case really belong? What do I want to do with this? Because I've got 43 other cases on my calendar this morning, and I've only got 3 hours at best to deal with it. People think they're going to get a lot of time in front of a judge. The reality is this: California, you're due at court at 8:30 in the morning to go check in with the clerk, check in with the bailiff, do any last minute filings. Judge takes the bench around 9 o'clock in the morning. They're going to see, let's say, 15 to 30 cases that morning. At 10:30, they're going to take a 15-minute break. At noon, they're going to stop. So from 9 a.m. to noon, you got 3 hours minus 15 minutes for a break, which is probably more like 20 or 30 minutes. So call it 2.5 hours at most to see 15 to 30 cases. How much time are you going to get? You're just not going to get that much time. That's why the judges do all their work in chambers before court. That's why you have to be really prepared when you go in. And when you file things, to have them really ready. You want to file a declaration that's got text messages, emails, pictures, transcripts of videos, transcripts of phone calls, voicemails that are going to prove your case. You want to basically prove your entire case well before you ever walk into a courtroom.
I want to add on, you mentioned about dads having their paperwork ready. What other things can they do preparation wise in regards to the court proceedings?
Sure. Well, in dad's law school, one of the things we teach dads is how to speak in public. And it's not a big, long, extensive course. It's, I think, a 15-minute video of here's what's happening when you're speaking in court. Here's why it's so scary to speak publicly. Here's tips on how to control yourself, control your breathing, control your anxiety. Recognize that you have anxiety, and that's normal. Recognize that when you have adrenaline running, your blood pressure goes up. Time compresses hugely. You're there, you're talking to the judge. She's over there making ugly faces at you. The future of your relationship with your kids is at risk here. Your throat is dry. You stumble, you stop talking. You feel like you are blowing it because you're not talking. Remember that it's okay to take a break for 3 seconds. Literally 3 seconds seems like a minute when you're there in the middle of this. But 3 seconds is only, how long is that? Doesn't seem inappropriate. It's fine. But because of the adrenaline, time is compressed. And you're thinking like, oh my God, I'm blowing it, I'm blowing it, I'm blowing it. You're not. Relax and breathe. Because one of the things that we teach is the judge needs time when they hear something from you to take it in, think about it briefly, and understand what you just said. And if you give them that 3-second break, it allows them to process what you just said so that you can then make your next point. But if you just keep taking rapid fire and all you do is talk, just gets overwhelmed. And they're like, okay, this person's really anxious, really crazy. I can't really understand what they're saying. Mom says they're angry. They're talking really fast. They're getting really kind of loud. They're animated. Maybe mom's right. Maybe they are angry. Maybe she's got a point here. But when you slow down and you take a breath and you calmly explain to the judge what's going on, all of a sudden her allegations that you're always yelling, always angry, they don't ring quite so true.
I just want to ask another conversation piece. What rights do dads have when it comes to custody cases?
So this is a really crucial thing. There's 2 different answers to that. The first is, are you married? And if you're married, you have the same rights mom does. Same rights to legal custody, which is go see the doctor, have school records, medical records, psychology records, sign for passports, travel with the kids. If you are not married, you have nothing. Well, let me rephrase that. You have one right. You have the right to pay child support. That's your right. Other than that, you have no rights. And there's a really good reason for that. And that is the law looks at it and says, we know this child came out of mom. Therefore, we know there's a parental relationship. We don't know if dad's the dad. Dad thinks he's the dad. Dad may have signed the birth certificate or signed the voluntary declaration of paternity. Dad may have been living together with mom for the last 2 years, paying the rent, buying the diapers, changing the diapers, doing everything dads do. But he could be wrong. 30% of all DNA tests show that dad wasn't the dad. Now, that's skewed because that's people who are already questioning the relationship. So it's a select group. But it shows that there's an awful lot of paternity fraud that goes on, which is why when we don't know that dads are the dad, we automatically give mom all the rights. And then dad has to go into court and say, Your Honor, I want to prove I'm the dad. I want to show up. I want to stand up. Let's get the DNA test done. Prove I'm the dad. Then give me my legal custody, my physical custody. I want a parenting plan in place.
Well, go ahead, Ed.
No, go ahead, Drew. I got a few more conversation pieces, but I want more than happy to jump back in.
Yeah, very interesting, especially that last point. That distinction is, it, as you said, it makes sense, but at the same time can be quite challenging and really puts more barriers in place for the father who is not married, is really eager and wants to be engaged with his child, and his partner, the child's mother, is using the system that's at her disposal with the support of probably lawyers to milk and maximize what she can gain from the father. So it's understandable why some fathers just simply throw their hands up and walk away, or they just simply can't because of the financial resources needed to be able to advocate and battle for the right for that child. So we do have some challenges there. But let's talk more specifically in terms of how you help dads. So where, I guess, do dads really stumble the most, and how do you support them to be able to move through this process better?
So the first big stumbling block for men is recognizing that they even need to do something. They're so overwhelmed because they've frequently had their children taken from them, been kicked out of their apartment, or they've left the apartment. Their world has been turned upside down. And now they're spinning, trying to find answers. And there's no answers out there for dads. Like if you go looking for legal aid, it doesn't really exist. If you go looking for a nonprofit to help fathers, good luck. That's why I created Dad's Law School, was because dads need this information and no one else is stepping up and saying, like, here's what you need to know. If you're married, you get this situation. If you're unmarried, you got this situation. You have to go do this to file either a divorce or paternity case. You need to send this to the judge to show the judge that you're a great dad. So what I'm doing is trying to show dads how to go ahead and start standing up for themselves. Because that's the biggest problem they have is they're frozen. They get like this paranoid place of my world's been ripped from me. I've got no friends because all my friends were her friends because I abandoned all my friends when we got together, because that happens like all the time. And what ends up happening is now you got a guy who's in an apartment. Maybe he's got an air mattress. Maybe he's got a coffee maker trying to rebuild his life. So on top of like feeling lonely and isolated from his family, now he's lonely and isolated and with no friends in an empty apartment trying to figure out like, what do I do next? Depression hits. Depression means what? Procrastination. I'm not going to do anything. I'm just going to give up. Let her win. She's the better parent. Moms are more nurturing. I'll just pay my child support. This sucks. The system's against me. And so what I'm trying to do is get these dads together, get them start talking to each other, build some friendships, build a community. Here, $97 a month is Dad's Law School. We've got monthly meetups. We've got online courses to teach you. I've got sample documents. I've got a WhatsApp group for you to talk to each other dads so you guys can communicate offline. It's a safe environment. Trust me, your ex is not going to be able to hack into your email to get into the WhatsApp group so she can figure out what you're telling other people about you. Because they do that. They stalk, and that's used against you in family court. They're going to know everything that's going on in your Facebook, your Twitter, your Snapchat, your IG. They're following all of that. So I'm trying to get these dads motivated and moving, because once they're in action, now we can get something going. Now we can get them fixed. And then for the dads who have court coming up real quick, we've got a 4-week basic training program which teaches them in 4 weeks, here's what you need to know. Here's how you get that in front of a judge. Here's how you talk to the judge. Here's how you advocate for yourself, so that you can get in there and actually get the time you want and the children deserve.
Okay, thank you. Ed?
Yeah, I want to get back to some practical stuff. For our dads out there, how do the courts decide child support, and what should dads know ahead of time?
So the first thing dads should know ahead of time is, if you have an ex, wife, or girlfriend who's not working, you either need to figure out a way to get them to start working again, or go into court and say, Your Honor, they're capable of making X number of dollars per year because they have this qualification, they used to do this, they've got this license. And if they're not working, that's fine. They don't have to work. But you need to impute income to them. You need to charge them with this amount of income, because it's what they could be making if they chose to work. It's the number one tool dads can use to kind of equalize child support. And the biggest thing with child support is time and incomes. That's how it's figured. So you've got, how much custodial time are you with your children? Usually dads are getting every other weekend, Wednesday night pizza dinner, half the summer, half the spring break, half winter break. It works out to about 20-25% timeshare, which I think is miserable. But what that translates into is 25% of your gross paycheck, that's the top line number before taxes, is going to be your child support for one child with 20% custody. So if you're making $4,000 a month, $48,000 a year, you can expect your child support is probably going to be around $1,000. That's calculated based on her having a job, you having 20% custody.
Good stuff. I also want to ask, what suggestions, if any, do you provide dads in regards to maintaining a strong relationship with their children during the process and post process?
The biggest thing, and it's where dads have the hardest time, is just getting time with their kids. It's getting that access to the children, and they have to get into court as soon as possible and tell the judge, I need time with my kids. They deserve it. I'm a good father. I'm capable. I have a good living environment. They're safe with me. Because that's what a judge is concerned with primarily, is, are the kids going to be safe with you? Because mom's saying they're not. They're physically, emotionally, mentally, whatever. The judge is going to be really concerned that the kids are safe with you. And once you've made those fears go away, now a judge can say, you need time with your children. Mom, why can't he have time with the kids? He's shown me his apartment. He's shown me he's got a job. He's shown me he's not a drug addict, alcoholic. He's shown me he's a good guy. He's shown me the apartment is baby proof. He's got beds for the kids. He's ready to be a father. He's done his parenting class. He's done his co-parenting class. He's got his first aid course. He's got his CPR course. He's got his age-appropriate childhood development course. What do you got, Mom? Why can't Dad have time? And then it becomes an issue of Mom's saying a whole bunch of things, and you got to argue against whatever those are. But that's the situation we're looking at.
I want to add on there to another from your suggestions. How can dads make sure their voice is heard during the court case?
This is where the declaration comes in. This is the paperwork beforehand. If you're going into court and the judge sees papers that show you've done everything you're supposed to do, that's where the judge is hearing from you. It's in the paperwork. That's the judge's first impression of you. So if you answer their questions beforehand, the judge is going to come out and be like, hey, Drew, how are you? It's been a while. I see that you're doing really well with the parenting classes. Good job. Glad to see that. Okay. So you got the new apartment. We got the beds for the kid. I saw the pictures. Love those. Like the Speed Racer motif. Good choice. The judge is automatically going to start wanting to hear from you. But if the documents only say, I'm a great dad, Judge is like, do I want to hear this person? Like, what do you got for me? Like, they're already suspects because you're not giving them anything. So it comes right back to put in the paperwork what you need.
I'm going to ask one quick question as we wind it down. Dad Central was built on the research behind the value of a positively involved father when it comes to child development outcomes. When you have a positively involved dad, every single developmental marker exponentially increases for children. So
Right.
It's good for kids when they have positively involved dads. If you are a positively involved dad, I guess my question is, how much does this factual research-based information matter or influence at all when it comes to family court?
Not as much as I'd like. The truth of the matter is, unless you are like an educational expert, unless you are a psychologist, unless you're bringing in that as an expert, it's hard to get that information in front of the judge. Now, we say it to the judge. I plant the seed. We tell the judge, listen, we all know dads are important. We've got fatherhood.gov programs that get billboards. Try and get them to like do something more than a billboards. Good luck, but we're working on it. The important thing here is to remember that what you need to tell a judge is why you're a good dad, why it's in the best interest of the children, and connect what you're doing with the outcome for the children.
It's good. Thank you. Ed.
I'm telling you, you're just hammering it and just putting it out there. I love it. I love it. I know this comes up, and I'm sure dads will ask. They'll ask us, if not, they're asking you, how can dads navigate false allegations that do sometimes come up in family law cases? Because I've been assisting a lot of fathers, and they say, this isn't true. How do I handle it?
So the biggest way we handle that is we try and find proof that shows the opposite. So mom says dad's never around. He never spends time with the kids. Okay, that's great. One of the things I teach dads in dad's law school is go get one of those desk calendars from your office supply store and use it and mark on the days that you have the kids. When you go to the water park, take the receipt, staple it to the calendar. You go to the movies, staple it to the calendar. Why is that important? For two reasons. One, makes it real easy because you got all the information in one place. Two, now you can A, take a picture of it, show the judge, here's the calendar. B, bring it into court and show the judge, here's the receipts, here's the times I did it, here's the proof that I did it. So when mom says, I'm not seeing the kids, I've got physical proof that she's lying. I don't have to call her a liar. In fact, you generally don't want to do that because all that does is make you seem angry. But you say, Your Honor, here's my proof that what I'm saying when I spend time with my kids is true.
Drew, anything else you want to add before we let our busy friend go?
No, I think what we should do is finish off with our two questions. So, David, we like to wrap up with two questions. One is, what is one question dads should be asking themselves if they find themselves in need of or to be involved with family law? And then the next question, what's one action or the first action they should take when it comes to improve or work through a family court situation?
So the first question was, what should they do first?
What questions should they be asking themselves about being involved with family court or family law?
So one of the answers I have for that is my kid inventory. I've got 400 questions so that dads can start compiling the information about their children. Dads frequently are like, I don't know what they're going to ask me. I don't know what to do. And it's a soup of thought. And this kind of focuses them in. They're not going to answer all 400 questions. I kind of went overboard on that one. I get it. But it's going to start that process of, here's what I do know about my kid. Here's what I want the judge to know I know about my kid. Those are the important things that a judge wants to know. And then obviously I'm going to say that the first thing they need to do is get some support group around you. You're lonely, you're isolated, that leads to depression, which leads to bad outcomes always. Those friends that you abandoned when you got together with Susie, the hot cheerleader, call them up, go for beers, have some chicken wings, go for a walk on the beach. I don't care what you do, but start getting a social network back because the isolation is a killer for dads. That mindset of I'm lonely, unloved, I'm unlovable, no one's there for me, will lead to bad outcomes. It's one of the reasons why suicide is such a huge issue among men. And we've got to do something about it. And the best way we can start fighting that is rebuild those friendships, rebuild those bonds. We do that partly in Dad's Law School with our WhatsApp group, with our monthly meetups, with our community, but you need to do more than just that.
Yeah, that's so good. Well, David, I just want to say thank you so much for coming on the show, speaking about a very challenging topic for many dads and many families, and providing some very practical, real insights that anyone can take away and begin improving in their situation wherever it is. So again, thanks so much for being here and being part of the show.
Thank you, Drew, and it's great being here.
And before we let you leave, what's the best way people can get in touch with you?
They just go to dadslawschool.com. I got a big button there for them to connect with me.
Well, look, thank you so much, as Drew said, for everything you have done, are doing for, and will be doing for dads and their families. And looking forward to working with you anytime we can, and looking forward to helping you anytime we can.
Thanks, guys.
Have a great day.